Okay, thanks. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Just a quick 5 minute introduction before I pass this on to Dr. Anne to take us into today's conversation. We're gathered this hot afternoon for our focus group discussion on the future of housing and urban planning in Rivers State. This is part of the Rivers 2050 Vision project that launched last year. And over the past 12, 13 months plus, we've been speaking with experts from across several fields. And today we're going to be looking at the housing and urban planning space as a very important sector. Just a bit of background as to our mission. The reason why we're doing this is because River State has not had a long-term plan or long-term vision for 50 years. The last time the state had a long-term vision was in 1975, and that was led by our first military governor. And it was the vision that led to so many things like Reason Palm and Points Block and all of the companies that were founded at the time. But it's been 5 decades of I'll say haphazard governance because it's mostly led by whoever is in power thinking about what they want to do without us having a blueprint that we should basically follow. So that's why we've gathered. I mean, it's been a labor of love. I mean, this is for most people who work. So on Saturdays, we're still here, putting in the 2 hours to be able to ensure that we're engaging, putting all of the work to ensure that we bring this vision to life. And just a big thanks to all of the members of the steering committee and the task force who have worked really, really hard over the past 13 months to ensure that this project actually comes alive. And our hope is that by October of this year, we'll be wrapping up this project and we'll be able to launch this vision book, which we hope will become blueprints for us as a state in how we engage government and demand for things from our political leaders and ensure that we have a sort of a blueprint for the next 25 years. All for you to catch up all of the things we've done in the past, they're all on YouTube. So we've been documenting every single thing because this is the first time in the history of the country that we're having a citizen-led vision. So we're making sure that we document every single thing. And also on our website as well, you can find all that information. Okay, so for today's discussion, I think there are three big questions on housing and urban planning in River State. The first question is, what has happened to the Greater Port Harcourt's master plan? The Greater Port Harcourt project was initiated in 2007. That was a project that actually went through the House of Assembly and was made law, expanding the width and breadth of Port Harcourt and imagining what a new Port Harcourt would look like. For those who have traveled around the world, like if you go to cities like Dubai, they'll show you like old Dubai and new Dubai, right? Which is the new Dubai is like the way that has the new, innovations and new buildings, but it still maintained the old part of the city to promote culture and tourism. And I think that was the same idea as well behind the Greater Port Harcourt project. It covered an area of over 1,900 square kilometers across 8 local government areas. And such a beautiful idea. So the question we'll be asking ourselves is what has happened to that? It was supposed to be a project that should last for 50 years. The master plan that would guide how we build, where we build, what we build. People are now just like building high rises in places that there should not be high rises and low buildings in places that there should be high rises. So just thinking about all of those things and ensuring that we bring ourselves back to that because that's law in River State and that's a law that needs to feed into the Rivers 2050 vision as well. Second question we should ask ourselves is how can we make housing affordable? I just got back from Abuja to today, and on my way back, I saw the greater Taft City. I'm sure people who had been in town for a long time probably know the Rainbow Town. And it does look like people are already living in the greater Taft City. And I think the question that I've always had about like public sector led housing projects is can a random person get this? How affordable is it? And what's the, I mean, I'm happy we have experts in the house, people like architect Bozimo, who has a lot of experience in this space. How do we ensure that affordable housing is affordable enough for Rivers people? How do we ensure you don't need to have connections and know someone in political space to give, allot you somehow, somewhere? How do we ensure that the projects are as sustainable, because if you look at Rainbow Town, for example, beautiful idea, began by one administration, and then, almost got, I mean, almost killed. I'm sure Mr. Bozimo will explain, but almost killed by another administration. So how do we ensure we stop having this haphazard, building projects here and there where if one person leaves, the next guy comes in and abandons it? How do we ensure that it's more continuous? And how do we ensure we also have private sector backing these projects? The final question, I think this is a very key question, and this also goes into our future, is how do we ensure that our architecture also is fit for purpose? I'm happy we have Prof in the house. Prof has extensive research on how we ensure that we're building context-specific housing, whether we like it or not. We're coastal states with sea level rise, with all of these things like flooding and climate change. It's important that architecture needs to sort of like fit into that context. We can't just keep building block houses. We've been building block houses for the next 10, 15 years. What would be sustainable buildings in the next decade? How do we ensure that the architectural space can lead that kind of thinking? And also convince people, because I mean, for us citizens as well, it's hard to convince us about different kinds of buildings, right? So how do we ensure that we get the public buying into kind of like creative buildings to ensure that we can manage these kind of disasters that would come from climate change? So I'm happy that we have a very stellar panel to handle this conversation. First, we have Professor Anthony Donobari Enwin, who is the head Department of Architecture, Faculty of Environmental Sciences at the River State University. Like I said earlier, has specialized in sustainable development, affordable housing, and urban planning. He holds a BTech in architecture, as well as an MSc and a PhD in urban and regional planning. He has published research on topics including agropolitan housing, sustainable housing development, and the role of architects in decision making. I'm sure if you Google his name, you find all of this information out there as well. We're really happy to have you here, sir. Thank you for giving us your time. We also
Thank
have,
you.
yes, thank you, sir. We also have architect Ebiwene Bozimo, who is, among many other things, is an innovative architect, project manager with over 30 years of international experience, spearheading complex and high visibility design, development, construction, and infrastructure projects across several sectors: commercial, industrial, retail, hospitality, healthcare, etc. For over 16 years, he has served as the managing director of Primavis Global Services and has worked on several notable projects, some of them that you already know, including the completion of the NDDC headquarters building. He has also previously worked as an assistant project manager at the Rainbow Town Development Limited, an 84 billion naira urban mixed-use development project in the heart of River State. And I'm sure that we have many questions about Rainbow Town. I'm sure he'll be able to help us answer and understand what's happened there. We're also happy to have Mr. Jesse Braide. Jesse is a tech entrepreneur, engineer, educator on a mission to solve painful societal problems with technology. He's the founder of Upperroom Listings, Nigeria's first tenant-powered housing platform, bridging the gap between outgoing tenants and incoming renters. And for those who have done any house search in River State, that is a big pain for so many people all across the state. So we're really happy to hear more about how Jesse is fixing this problem. Since launching its reservation model, he's onboarded over 1,000 users and already is beginning to see how he can engage more people to get on the platform. He's mentored over 50,000 learners on YouTube and other e-learning platforms. He also codes as a software engineer. He's a teacher, he's a Sunday school teacher. He does so many things. So thank you so much, Jesse. We're very happy to have you join to this conversation. We also have Mr. Perri Precious, who is a registered estate surveyor and valuer. He's also a lecturer and doctoral candidate at River State University. And his research focuses on slum upgrading as a strategy to bridge housing deficits in Port Harcourt. He currently serves as a lecturer at the Department of Estate Management, Exams and Records Officer of the department as well, and the National Secretary of the Young Estate Surveyors and Valuers Forum of the Nigerian Institute of Estate Surveyors and Valuers. He has demonstrated strong leadership across, I've known him for a very long time. He's worked across several organizations, Rotary Club of Bayview, Rotary Club of Port Harcourt. He's been Director of Sports, SUG, as well as Speaker of the Postgraduate Student Parliament at the University. So thank you so much. He's a managing partner at Dapa Perri and Associates. And he's really passionate about the issue of housing as well in the state. So just really happy to hear his thoughts and insights. Finally, we have Mr. Andy Umana. Andy is the founder and head of growth at Relsify Development and Investment Limited, a property tech startup focused on reducing the barrier to entry for real estate investments across Africa. He has over 6 years experience in blockchain and crypto space, driving cutting edge ideas and making investments as well. He's also a board member of Afro Bubbles, which is Africa's first sold out NFT collection on the Solana blockchain. So thanks a lot, Andy, for joining us. Just really happy. I feel like this is a very balanced, panel, because you have the experience of the wisdom of Prof, and also you have the enthusiasm of people like Jesse and Andy who want to disrupt the space. So just looking forward to hearing all of the thoughts. Okay, I'll hand on now to Dr. Anne to take us forward and Bira to hold the conversation. Thanks a lot, Dr. Anne. Over to you. You're muted, sorry. Yeah, you're muted.
Hi, good evening. Sorry, good evening, everyone. It's a very vast panel, and I'm happy to be here. And so, to the panelists, all the panelists, Rivers State is one of Nigeria's wealthiest states, yet housing remains deeply unaffordable, poorly planned, and largely inadequate for its growing population. How would you describe the current state of housing and urban development in Rivers State? Its most critical areas? Any bright spots worth building on? So this is for all the panelists. I think we should take Prof first. I'm waiting, like I'm itching to hear from him. So Prof, I think you should go first, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Can you hear me?
Good afternoon, sir. Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, I don't know why I should take the first question, because there's one man there that I meet everywhere, that takes me everywhere, that is everywhere. His name is Ebiwene Bozimo. So he should want to hear his voice. He's a radio advocate for architecture and urban planning. So why don't you allow him talk first so that his energy will spread to all of us? Anyway, Ebi, good evening.
Good evening.
All right,
good evening
everyone else.
To everybody.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. What I want to say first is that I prefer that we look at this matter from the beginning, some bit of description so that we have a landing part, because it's something we need to hear about. So I will start to say that all of these things, any government, any society, when they want to do things, they do things on purpose. And planners call that vision. Okay, and basically that's a statement of action that are backed by laws. They contain policies, they contain plans, they contain programs, there's implementation, there's monitoring and evaluation. Then that's what we call development control right now. And they have enforcers, implementers, and regulators. But that's not all. Visions must be people focused. It must be environmentally friendly and be sustainable. There must be progress. The question we are asking is so important that you find out that what I just mentioned there does not happen here. How did we get to housing? We were colonized. Some people came here with, I said, first thing is that you must have people-focused programs. Our heart was not in their heart. So they came here, first of all, colonized us, got our land, got our resources, put themselves in some places called GRA. And after a while, things expanded and they got some of Nigerians into high offices, and then they made some houses for them. And that was how housing started. Until maybe after independence, we now have some small things that look like housing. Then entered the 70s with the oil boom. And then Lagos State did a few things. The government stepped in. They had all kinds of programs. But the core thing is that they have never really used data. that fits the people. Let me just give an instance, for instance. I'm talking about, you have wrong data. AB is here, I can testify. If you ask the federal government now, they will tell you that only about, they will tell you about 30% of Nigerian population is employed by government. And that's not true. Reason is this. If you look at Rivers State, there was last year, 2025, there was they did a census on, there was a belief that there were ghost names, and government did a roll call of all workers in Rivers State. It came to about 37,000. Let's say we have workforce of 40,000. Rivers State, as of today, projected population is 4 million. If you divide that, you'll see that those who work in government are 0.01% of the people. All plans by government, either at the state or federal level, they use government workers, a part of them, level 1 to 3 or 1 to 4, as the low-income people. Meanwhile, the rest of the population are there that require housing. I want to contrast that with UN says that housing is not just a physical structure, that we have right to housing. We have right to housing. Everyone has a right to live in a secure, peaceful, and dignified house. And there are 7 pillars. The first one is legal security of tenure, availability of services, materials, and infrastructure. Affordability, you should not spend more than 30% of your income on housing. Then habitability, the place must be such that you can live and live well. It should be accessible to where you work and where you want to go to. It must be in a proper location where it can be accessed. There must be cultural adequacy. You shouldn't have housing that kills the culture of the people. And it should carry on with the psychological, social, and physical needs of the people. I gave this background because what we call housing now that we are talking about is not actually housing. They have not done that. That's why they give it names like mass housing. They call it low-cost housing. But that's not what we are talking about. We are talking about providing housing for the people of society that have right to it. And there's what we call inclusive planning. When you are doing this housing thing, who did you consult? The communities, the proposed users. How did you get there? How can government do plans for people to live and the people have no say in where they will live? These are the issues. So I'm saying that if you combine aggregate together, there is from the example that I gave, 0.1% of people working, yet they don't have it. When these houses they provide, the few come, they do balloting and tell the people, okay, if you get to win, you will put down 10 million naira down payment. Who has 10 million? I'm a university lecturer. I'm a professor. Where is my 10 million? So we're not discussing about housing for the people yet. That's why I said, well, I started with my friend. So now, AB can take off from there. I want to just say that my anger stops here. Let him say something and I come back to that. But I'm saying that what we're evaluating now is not proper housing. I prefer us dealing with how should we arrange our housing development plans. What should we do? Our problem is that there's gross housing deficit. And people are driven into substandard places, what we call informal settlements. There's crime, there's everything wrong with us. What should we do? That's why we're here. So I would like my friend to say something, and then maybe so I don't take all the time.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. This question is for all the panelists. So Architect Bozimo, you can go ahead, and then subsequently Mr. Jesse Braide, Mr. Perri Precious, and Mr. Andy. So we all want to hear your thoughts on this. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you very much for the privilege of joining you. Thank you, Architect Enwin. I think part of what has made housing so inaccessible is that we have simply refused to use our imagination. I'm sure on this panel here, I may be one of the most recent transplants to Rivers State, Port Harcourt. Not because I hadn't visited occasionally, but the time I moved full-time to there was just 2012. Before then, I'd come to visit my uncle infrequently on occasion. And as a child, I heard the word Garden City. Now, having grown up in a campus in Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria, with properties surrounded by trees rather than fences, I thought I would come to Rivers, Port Harcourt, and be blown away. There was one thing that impressed me, though. In front of every house back in the day, I'm talking about before 2012 that I came, every little front compound had a little bit of design, bit of greenery, something friendly. By the time I came years later, it was fences. Some of us may remember when then Governor Amechi came and put a red line at 4 feet high and said any fence higher than that must come down to that height in attempting to open up the space a little bit. But that was, I think, primarily in GRA. The point is the housing deficit, we say nationally, there was a time former Minister Fashola said we had a 17 million deficit. I don't know where those numbers came from. Those numbers have been bandied about. Sometimes it's 10 million, sometimes it's more. The fact is, even right there in GRA, there are many multi-level buildings that are utterly empty, maybe squatters living in them. So there are spaces for human beings to live, but there's one, the affordability thing. If a whole professor arguably has no access to ready sums of money, we're not talking about lack of housing, but lack of affordability. Because in other communities, yes, people cannot afford $400,000 to put down on a home, but there are financial arrangements that give them what we know as a mortgage. And mortgages there can last from 15 years to 30. Now I'm hearing proposals of 50 years in the United States and UK. In Nigeria, you'll be told you have to pay 50 million for a house. You have to pay it in 4 installments over the next 4 months. Come on, that's preposterous. So it's almost as if they don't want you to afford it and giving you an impossible, unless you are dishonest. Let me not call you anything. Unless you're dishonest, you can hardly ever have that kind of money. So we're talking about why has affordable housing not appeared? I think it's a lack of imagination. It's also a lack of priority, because it's not as if money doesn't exist. Money exists. When we hear the kinds of budgets that are, and we are limiting ourselves to Rivers State in this conversation, when we hear the budget of Rivers State, second to Lagos is always the highest. So it's not as if money isn't there, but we have chosen to direct the funds to other things that sadly do not include creating affordable housing. Yes, in our most recent government thing, there is an initiative on the road to the airport from Obikwiri roundabout. There's an initiative to put some housing there for, I think, middle-level civil servants. It's a drop in the ocean. It could help. Yes, it might be allocated to them via ballot. We don't know. I say it has been a lack of prioritization, because nobody expects one individual to provide all housing. We also have private developers. For private developers, their figures are largely on affordability. So it's an affordability crisis much more than it's a lack of pure housing, though the lack of numbers of housing is part of the problem. As we will discuss a bit later, one project I was involved with tried to provide housing, but I will tell you point blank, it was not of the affordable type, Rainbow Town. I'll stop here and let others talk.
Thank you very much. Let's go ahead, Mr. Perri. I don't know if Mr. Perri is here. Mr. Perri? Okay.
Okay. Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Let me especially recognize everybody on this panel, and also salute my senior colleague here, Architect Enwin, the head of Department of Architecture. Okay, so the two speakers have basically laid a strong foundation on the matter under discussion. However, I just want to extend further. You know, in Rivers State, if we count states that are vibrant in the country, we'll look at Lagos, we'll look at cities, Lagos, Abuja, and we'll talk about Port Harcourt. So if Rivers State shares part of, or even most of the housing deficits, the figures that researchers basically brand as what is existing, even if I personally disagree with it, right? So housing is not just any other government, it's just not any other need of mankind. It is an essential, basic need of humankind, and just the second after food. And its impact on the health, welfare, and the productivity of any human is profound. And I think, well, fortunately, government has really not given enough attention to housing. In Rivers State, just like the immediate speaker said, there is an issue of affordability. But you see, as a researcher, I have argued, is it just affordability or also availability? You see, we know that there is housing crisis in Rivers State with no clear intention by government to either attempt, to reduce its deficits or completely eradicate it. Now, I'll give you instances. The recent intervention by government, that's the collaboration with TAF on the Oberikore Airport Road, right? We have the average two-bedroom goes for 41 million. Just like my prof said, even the average civil servants, how many can afford 41 million at outright payment with no plan for mortgage that would extend even up to 20 years? You see, so there is affordability and then there is availability. There is basically lack of suitable spaces that one want to rent, even if you have the money in Port Harcourt. And we see how agents and the rest have basically made these units unaffordable, right? So there is a context of availability, there is availability, and then there is also affordability. Now, in my research, I am making case for upgrading the slums where we have we have major, a large number of inhabitants in Rivers State reside, right? We have them in Old Port Harcourt Township, where, just like architect Enwin highlighted, where just by the provision of infrastructures like road, security of tenure, that's giving them titles to those lands, which would basically encourage them to erect buildings that are suitable. Most times people, not like people do not have resources to erect suitable housing. But I think we'll get to that issue of land grabbing, government coming to demolish housing that are without adequate titles and all of that. So by providing infrastructure, by securing their tenure, right, providing security, water supply and sanitation would basically elevate this status from slum to somewhere appealing for individuals to live. Unfortunately, I don't think government has, put in enough, to address the housing deficit in Rivers State, which most people put at over 500,000 housing units. Just last 2 years, we have the government collaborate with TAF to give us 20,000 housing units. So even if government over the course of a decade, right, Rivers State government over a decade, put in the 100,000 housing units, right, which they've not been able to do, it would basically just scratch off the surface of the deficit we're having in Rivers State. And for a city that is basically surrounded by creeks, good spaces that government can just open up, just like we did in Borokri some over two decades ago. We just saw how a government, I think that was government of Okilo, Sanfield that area, and then created access into those neighborhoods, and we saw how development has taken over. So there are creative measures to address housing deficit in Rivers State, and I don't think our government have taken any lead, to address these issues that are on ground.
Thank you very much, sir. So for the next two speakers, Mr. Jesse Braide and Mr. Andy Mr. Josibre, let's hear from you, sir. Mr. Josibre, we can't hear you, sir. If he's not coming up, let Mr. Andy say something so we can move ahead.
Good evening, everybody.
Hi, good evening, sir.
Yeah, standing on all existing protocol. I'm so sorry that I joined in late. The topic in question is really exciting to me, right? And because I've sort of like studied very well both the informal sector of this market and like the entire value chain. I understand what demand looks like. I understand what supply looks like. I understand what financing looks like. Because in a way, I operate a real estate development firm. I also give out investments and all that, you know. And I also sort of like sit on the board of a bank. So in a lot of ways, I've interacted with everything that concerns this value chain. So there's something I understand, which is why it's not like I'm disagreeing with what the other speakers have said, but there's something that I know that our real problem is that we're not talking about here. Our problem is that we don't have data. We don't have data. We talk about the supply, like there's a housing deficit gap, obviously is there, right? So, and we talk about financing, we talk about developers not even building the good things, developers not building affordable housing. The problem why developers cannot access the kind of funds that they need to build affordable housing is because we don't have enough data as a bank to even finance a developer. Not to talk of financing an entrepreneur, a trader on the street. What we should be discussing, this is the housing problem that we have is like an indication of the real problem that we have. Is the real problem is an indication. The real problem we have here is that there's no data. I will shock you with the statistics, right? An average American bank sits on, when I say sit on as a bank, I mean the deposits of customers, the money in the bank. The bank can only keep around like 20 to 25% of that money. But in Nigeria, an average bank sits on more than 90% of their running capital. Do you know why they're not giving out that money out to loans or for mortgages or to developer financing? It's because there's no data. I will shock you again. Do you realize that there's a program that is out there that the Nigerian government just introduced, MREF? I'll give you this as data. You can check it out, right? There's MREF right now in the market. How many people are qualified for that liquidity? Why are they not qualified? We don't have data. We don't have data. So what we should be talking about in rooms like this is that, yes, we have a problem with design, we have a problem with financing, we have a problem even with the supply. Why is everybody building luxurious houses? Why is nobody building affordable homes? These problems are there, and I agree. But the real problem, what we should be talking about, that is the core that fixes all of these things, that when we can have an aggregated system. Because think about, there's this example I give every day when I talk on any panel about how shitty Nigerian data structure looks like. Imagine a CFO, imagine a government, and I'm saying this in terms of government. Imagine a government issuing 2 CFO for the same piece of land. It has happened countless that I've witnessed. With the amount of tech that we currently have, imagine that the data is just data, is data. Our problem, and the solution is very easy. The solution is easy. Just call Andy, call anybody you know. We can aggregate this data.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Andy. It's getting very exciting. The next question is for Prof. And Mr. Andy, I'll come back to you. I think you have the questions, and luckily you sound like you have the solution. So I'll definitely come back to you. So, Prof, sir, Rivers State University produces architecture graduates every year. How can the academic community play a more active role in shaping the built environment of the state, rather than simply training professionals who leave? We know the Japa syndrome. Everybody wants a better life. So that question is for you, Prof.
Thank you, my sister. Like I said earlier, I'm excited to be here, but I will ask you to please tell the Rivers State government to apologize to my university and my department. I'll tell you why. We are doing architecture, but do you know that Port Harcourt is a historic city? Port Harcourt is not a modern city, and we don't plan to be. Let me give an example. My friend is there. I have Perri there, I know so well. I know my architect colleague. Listen, the tallest building in Port Harcourt was built in the 70s. The tallest building in Port Harcourt was built in the 70s. From the 70s till now, there have been no building bigger than that. Presidential Hotel came alive in the 70s, early 70s. That's architecture. I'm talking about architectural pieces now. There have been no other building taller for hotel development in Port Harcourt bigger than Hotel Presidential. So you find out that the students we are discussing that we are teaching, I had to on my own carry progress students to Dubai when I cried that I couldn't keep training locals. I took students with my money, not university, to Dubai for those I was taking on projects, who I was managing their project. Because there is nothing to learn here. Listen, let me just give you an example. Nigeria is 904,000 square kilometers in size. And Canada is 11 times that figure. In Canada, you cannot, they don't do low-rise spread. They do high-rise. What for? To conserve land for future development. That's because sustainability. But in Port Harcourt, development is controlled by landowners, controlled by high, sell, high, buy. No infrastructure, nothing, no linkages whatsoever. We are more or less like reactive planning. We are doing reactive planning. When problems of flood come, when problem of congestion, then the government goes inside and tears people down. Say, okay, we are expanding the road. They use to eat money and we remain there. So in terms of architecture, if we want to do things that will move this place forward, then we must be intentional. Perri just mentioned it. Our coastlines, our waterfront communities, what are they like? Will they remain so informal forever? But before that is the policy as a people. This thing that my friend talked about here, Bozimo, what he talked about here, what is the intention? How do we, how do we want to do it? People, we have low income, medium income, high income. In what neighborhoods do we plan such that either they live alone or they integrate them together? What kind of housing? He just mentioned to me that he was coming from the airport, he saw that new city. That thing there is a barrack. It looks like a big market. Look at the view. That's a barrack. You don't find that anywhere in the world again. Where you are doing a housing estate, low income, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, on single now in a city where land is scarce. So next week now, I'm going to Uyo, taking my student on excursion. I do that every year. There is nothing to do in Port Harcourt. There's nothing to look at. There's nothing to learn from. There's no new structure. There's no new development plan. No master plan. Nothing to look at. So we are talking about that. No, I will not. I will say for Rivers State, no. But in terms of answer to our question, our graduates should be equipped to turn away from expecting to be employed. Okay, they should become entrepreneurs. Go into material. There's one area that I'm talking to somebody who is trying to put up a private university. Listen, in this Nigeria, in this Port Harcourt, the best screeders are from Togo, they are Ghana, from Senegal. Okay, that's POP. The carpenters are from there. The plumbers are from there. All the artisans are from there. So I'm thinking, how can we do this architecture such that the things that drive the ingredients of the architecture? Fortunately, my department, we are turning to a faculty. We're going to be doing interior design. We're doing architectural technology. We're going to be doing landscape planning. We're going to be doing other things, marine architecture. We can go into this and the artisan, the things that we do. Listen, if you live abroad, let me use Canada, for example, and you have a block sink. You cannot plunge it by yourself. If you do, whatever happens, you have problems. So you call somebody. A plumber will tell you, okay, I'll come fix it. Give me 2 weeks. 2 weeks. And you have leakage in your house. He's giving you 2 weeks. You know why? He has work to do. So those things that we run away from, that we think is for low people, that is architecture. That is engineering in practice. So we are thinking that, think like that. The other thing is that my friend there is a developer. How many architects work with him? Ask him. On a big site, maybe one or two. But these architects can actually train beyond that and do things even manually, that close to doing the work. That doesn't change anything. After all, engineers fix their cars, engineers fix airplanes. So our training from my university is that we are trying now to see how they can enter the society and do better. Because relying on government for plans and programs, it's not working. They are not ready. They are not willing. But going forward, we need to, one, do our proper plans. Where are we going? What are the policies? Zone the city. Infrastructure, you just mentioned about Greater Port Harcourt here. It has failed. No linkages. We are told that they will have transport corridors, rail lines, and stuff like that. No one. Instead of new lanes coming, the old ones are deteriorating. That's the kind of state we live in. So if we want to develop, we must come together and sit down. That's why I got involved in this thing. I'm just happy that we are thinking like this because, like I told you when I started, this Port Harcourt is a historic town. There is nothing architectural about it. There's no picture of any building in Port Harcourt in my department that I will put there. I put buildings outside. I go to Lagos to put buildings. I go to Abuja. I go to Uyo. What has happened to us? Let our government, let us think properly because Port Harcourt is dying. Port Harcourt is decaying. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. Thank you so much. PH is a historic town. That is profound. Okay, so the next question is for Architect Bozimo. And in 5 minutes, sir, Rivers State has a unique geography, coastal communities, riverine areas, flood-prone areas, and a dense urban core. How should architecture and urban design respond to these realities? How do we build cities that are both beautiful and resilient? In 5 minutes, sir, please. Thank you.
You know, just to continue from where Professor Enwin stopped, my nephew in Canada was asked a question in their class. Show buildings from your city where you grew up. He was new in Canada then. And I searched hard and long to try and send something from Port Harcourt. At the end, I took an interesting picture of Presidential Hotel because of those balconies that have a zigzag pattern and sent just to give him something because truly there wasn't much in terms of wow architecture here. Now, talking of historic city like Port Harcourt, even the Dubai that we know of has its historic sections as well as the modern sections where, of course, given the whole picture of the modern section, but the old sections are still well planned because we're talking about urban planning here. They're well planned, well laid out. You can go to the old markets and you can feel safe, sound, and sane, even in the old parts. So it's about moving away from the compact ways we are planned. Now we are trying to improve a lot of Port Harcourt, more sidewalks and all that, but the buildings have to respond to human beings. We are talking about how to make it more resilient. We have all these, we have low-lying areas. Port Harcourt is the best town I've seen where you can have a flood on top of a bridge. How ridiculous. Is that an infrastructure failure? How can you have a bridge on top of a river and it is flooded on top of the bridge? Did we not just maintain the drain or do we not design the drainage? How do you have a bridge on top of a river and you're having a flood, you're driving across in Woji there? Some things they boggle the mind. What we must do is go back to basics. There are simple principles. In as much as, you know, we are talking about the future, think about this. AI did not exist when my father lived. We're living in a world where you can virtualize everything. The first thing to do is get the stakeholders involved. The next thing to do is to virtually think. The cheapest place you can imagine is in the virtual space. We have to have exercises where we take regions of the town, reimagine them. Of course, in every normal architecture curriculum, students do it regularly in year 2 or year 3, urban design and urban planning. But we can now, but it's normally limited within the students, within the department. I think as part of what we have to do, we must begin to market those things to the populace because they say a picture is worth 1,000 words. We can talk and talk and talk. But if you have to show somebody who's living on Emekuku Street what Emekuku 2.0 can look like, and you put one or two of the existing buildings that they know, they can begin to imagine it. And when they begin to imagine it, they can now be brought on board and become the drivers, because as long as maybe only specialists or professionals in any area are the ones driving this, you find a lot of inertia. People are, I beg. But when the man sees that by the imagination that I'm proposing, he stops having floods, packages from Jumia can be designed to his street, because really, many of our places are just like we have ungoverned spaces in Nigeria. We have unaddressed places. You cannot send. The reason why the business of pickup spots exists in many Nigerian towns is that you don't have addresses. If you make an urban scheme where every house is addressed, one, you improve potential for government revenue. So that, of course, will interest government because you can address every spot. And then I can sit down in my house and get a delivery and not worry that if I leave it outside, it'll be picked up. How to make our town more resilient? Consider our climate. Consider our design styles. We have this style now where everything is paved over. The green that a garden should be part of the where rain can percolate. Sustainability and resilience is part of making sure that our streets are not flooded, our backyards are not flooded. We have addresses, we have a style. We're in the south of the country, we have more rain. We can't be designing as if we're in Kano. And those buildings will now respond to how we live. If you are to put up I grew up in the north, if you are to put up a shirt in a garden in the north to dry, in 2 to 3 hours is dry. In Rivers State, if you wash today, you might not dry that shirt for 3 days because you are waiting for sun. And if you leave it out and you don't come back in time, it's wet. So resilience is making sure that our environments respond to our climate and our condition. And then let's also bring in the cues that we see around us. Is leafy, it's green. That's an advantage ordinarily. But we seem to just want to demolish everywhere we go to. Like in some of our developments, they go in there with a bulldozer and level everything and then replace it with artificial environments. We can't keep doing that. We're not living our best life that way. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Still, this question is for you. Between 2012 and 2021, you served as an assistant project manager at the Rainbow Town Development Limited.
Yes.
Being one of Rivers State's most ambitious housing projects. Why do you feel this project did not achieve its full potential? And what lessons can we learn for future public-private housing in the state? What are your thoughts, sir? So in 3 minutes so that we can...
I'll say, yes. I will say, first of all, if that project existed in Lagos, it would be finished right now. I think there were problems, legal and financial, between the government and the backers. That was First Bank at the time. I don't know what's happening right now. There were also many stakeholders who I would say did not want to see that project finish because it's not rocket science. The highest building there is 15 stories, not rocket science, nothing really complex about it. It might surprise you to know that some people actually live there. There's a series of low-rise structures, but it's those high-rises that are abandoned. The low-rise, people actually live inside the estate. It's a thriving community of low-rise, terraces and villas. People live there. But for the high-rise structures, unfortunately, everything is in place, in fact, materials and all that, but we also ran into some economic issues. But way before the economic issues, I would argue that there were some flaws with the contracting and there were some flaws with the execution. We had multiple contractors doing each building, and there were some flaws in how those contracts were structured. It's unfortunate. I spent a lot of my life there, and I have regrets that we didn't do something so elementary.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. So, Mr. Jesse Braide, are you back? Okay, he's here. Welcome. We lost you earlier. Yeah.
Can you hear
me?
Me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear. Technology is disrupting housing markets globally. How is Upperroom addressing the inefficiencies in Nigeria's housing market? And what structural barriers, regulatory, financial, or cultural key are slowing down property tech adoption in Rivers State?
Wow, amazing. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm so sorry. I was having a slight network issues earlier. All right, so Upperroom Listings, as you've heard, was a Proptech platform that I built myself and my team to address the whole house hunting issues that we are having, not just in Rivers State, but all around Nigeria, right? So currently, as you know it, there's a lot of inflation in the markets, and also there's not enough government regulation to traditional agents. So Upperroom was a system that was built to address this, right? So we do not work directly with agents. I mean, we tried to use agents, but we couldn't cut a deal that was reasonable and empathetic, because if they had their own percentage, which is around 20% thereabouts, we couldn't add any other thing on that percentage. So it was irrational for us to go that route. And then another thing also, which we noticed in the system, was most of the landlords are digitally illiterate, right? Most of them do not.
Yes, that is very true.
Most of them do not use. So introducing tech really doesn't really solve any problem for them. Rather, it complicates things for them. I mean, we went from house to house initially where we were trying to launch, to give the solution to landlords, and they kicked us out, and they just looked at us like Yahoo boys in quotes, trying to make money off them. So it's really, really funny, like tech, like trying to innovate here in this part of the world. So we evolved a new model, right, which we noticed was what a lot of students were using then, right? So I remember then going to a particular house, and then I asked the caretaker of the house to give me information whenever they have vacancy. And she told me that they never have a vacant house. And I was amazed. I was like, you guys never have a vacant house? She said, yes. And she said that when someone is leaving, the outgoing tenant informs his friend, informs someone that, they're about to leave. And, before the person leaves, the new person already books the house. So there's never any vacancy in the house. So there was where we had the spark of Upperroom Listings. So we built what is called a tenant-powered model, where outgoing tenants can link renters to the houses they are parking out from. By so doing, we are able to cut out the middlemen, the multiple inspection fees, and also regulate the prices. So right now we work with outgoing tenants. Okay, so that's how we are addressing the whole house hunting inflation currently right now, in the market. And yeah, there are lots of barriers, right? There are cultural barriers. Many people are not aware of this system, right? So one thing that I usually encounter for a startup is education, right? You need to sensitize people about it, right?
That's true.
So yeah, you need to sensitize people about it, because when people go out for house hunting, the first thing they think about is, how can I get an agent's number, this and that, but currently we are changing how that's done, because Upperroom is a community-driven system. So if you're parking out, you can be an agent. Basically, that's what we are saying. And the amazing part is that we give you an incentive, right? We give you an incentive for telling us about the house you're parking out from. So we basically call it park out and cash out, right? So one of the major challenges that we've encountered is education. People are not really much aware, about the system. Something else too that you also notice is, because it's a tech system, it would have been amazing if every house, every apartment in Port Harcourt followed the particular order, because you notice that some places, for example, in GRA, you have it in a very standard numbering system, right? You can, number the houses very well, but many places around, it's very difficult to have that, exact description, because of the numbering system. Most of the houses are not well numbered, no, proper description, and it makes tech, adoption very, very difficult. So those are one of the some of the challenges that we have encountered. But so far, so good. It's something that we see to be improving. Like, we've seen lots of people use the platform. We've seen people have some reservations, some houses through the platform, and it's a change in the system currently. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jesse. You'll get there. The agency. This question is also a follow-up for you in 3 minutes, sir. The agency middleman has been a pain point for renters and buyers in Rivers State. What do you think a housing market free of exploitative intermediaries look like by 2050, and how do you think we can get there?
Wow, amazing. That question is really, really packed to answer in 3 minutes, but I'll try.
Sorry about that.
Okay, so one of the things I'm looking at for the house hunting market, the housing market basically, is that to be data driven, right? Because one of the benefits of running a tech system is that we have access to data, right? Because we are working with outgoing tenants and we're also working with landlords. So we are able to get proper descriptions of every listing on our platform. All right. We also do physical verification of the houses. So we also have the geo coordinates, right? So we're able to also track the histories of tenants that have been in every apartment. So it gives us an insight, to the nature of the apartment and the environment. So housing by 2050 is something we are looking at is going to be data driven, right? Also, house hunting currently is centered on the intermediaries, which are our traditional agents. We also envision it in Upperroom that house hunting will be community driven rather than agent driven, right? So, like we said, we are in a tenant powered model, also connecting landlords too that are tech savvy. But right, since it's been run by the community, we are outsourcing it to everybody, so everybody can participate in providing information. Because one of the things that makes house hunting so expensive, right, today, the inflation, one of the things that justifies inflation is sort of the monopoly of information, right, by agents. So, but when we outsource it to everybody, it becomes community driven. As a result of that, we are able to regulate the fees. So, yes. And then finally, it's also be regulated, right? Because I know that most times when you have inflation, there's either no regulation or there's no competition, right? So agents right now do not have competition. Upperroom is giving them that competition. And we're also looking at it that in the future, there will also be government checks, on every agent, because right now there's a very low barrier to becoming a traditional agent. So we also envision that in the near future, we'll be able to partner with the government to ensure that, there are licenses actually to be, an agent so that we can have more regulation. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. And the next question, thank you, sir, Mr. Jesse. The next question is for Mr. Perri Precious. In 3 minutes, sir. Estate surveyors and valuers play a critical role in land valuation, property management, and housing policy. How effectively is this profession contributing to the housing development in Rivers State today? And what reforms are needed to unlock its potential? This is for Mr. Perri.
Okay, so as you know, the estate surveyors and valuers are very central to housing development ecosystem, but fortunately our contributions, can best be described as important yet, I think, under leverage. In principle, the profession sits at the heart of housing delivery, because we provide land valuation, feasibility analysis, which I believe developers have not really taken advantage of. We see development springing here and there, mostly on completed, because these analyses were not done, as to ascertain if some of them are feasible, and even if they are feasible, how viable, are these developments, so in short, our functions are critical, not just in determining where houses are built, right? But also it's, the affordability, sustainability, and long-term value too. Now in practice, the effectiveness of estate surveyors and valuers in driving the housing development in Rivers State, I can say truthfully, remains moderate, rather than transformative. We know that there is the crisis of housing in Rivers State, and rural urban migration, population, explosion, and all of that, basically expanding informal sector. However, we also notice as practitioners that estate surveyors are often engaged late in the development process, like I've said, leaving out feasibility that is very critical to the success of most projects. If you look at the development process for housing, estate surveyors are usually at both ends of the process, at the conception stage, where we guide investors, to acquire lands and do these appraisals, and also at the completion stage, where we help them either dispose, right, or manage, to get clients and all of that. But in all of this, we've also encounter constraints, both institutional, constraint and also the regulatory environment, particularly land administration. Like we know in River State, the process of acquiring secured land title is one cumbersome, exercise with delays in obtaining certificate of occupancy, that's the CFO. Sometimes it stretches from, several months, to years, right? Now, this creates uncertainty in the development process. It also increases both transaction costs and ultimately discourages investors, to invest in formal housing. So even the most accurate valuation or feasibility analysis by estate surveyors and valuers, even when we do this analysis to investors, it most times does not translate into effective housing delivery when access to land is inefficient and ineffective. So that's exactly why I said, in the sense, while our profession is very central to housing development, we've basically we've not really contributed, at the highest level to see that the deficit in housing that we currently experience in River State is actually addressed. More so, like I said, even when we advocate their policy, advises government on policies, most times we see that our government really do not, because there is no continuity in governance, right? You would give some professional guidance, and advice to a particular government, and at the exit of that government, you see another one comes in, basically toes a different path. So we can say, while we are big in advocacy, it has really not translated in the result that we envisage, to address the housing deficit in River State.
Thank you so much, Mr. Perri. A follow-up question for you. Land grabbing, disputed titles, and opaque valuation processes are common complaints in River State. What concrete steps can be taken to build a more transparent, trustworthy property market in the state over the next 25 years? Follow-up question for you, sir.
Next 25 years. Okay, so the truth is, building a transparent and trustworthy land, and property market in River State for the next 25 years requires both systemic reform, and systemic reform, and then political will, of successive governments, right? And not just incremental adjustments. Well, the issues of land grabbing, disputed titles, I would talk about opaque valuations much later. Now, the issue of land grabbing and disputed titles are just symptoms of deeper structural weakness, that we have in the land management system in River State. And then addressing these challenges requires long-term, like you said, which will be phased transformation. But in the short term, I feel our priority must be land administration reform and transparency. You see, River State, it should embark on the full digitalized or the digitalization of land records, where we create a centralized, publicly accessible system that will integrate ownership, title status, whether this land is encumbered, and more so the transaction history. And I think that's where our tech colleagues will come in. Now, this will basically reduce the information lopsidedness that we have. See, if you want to buy a land in River State, information that you can get at the flip of your hand, you would basically spend weeks, right, doing investigations. at the land registry, which basically is not digitalized, so this basically, and we've seen that there are evidence that if we digitalize land system, it can reduce even up to 50%, of land dispute that we currently observe, right? And also we shorten very drastically the processing time. Now, alongside this, the process of obtaining CFO in Rivers, like I have said, should be streamlined. It is so cumbersome that, like I said earlier, it will take weeks or months, most times even years, to get the governor's assent to your CFO. It should be streamlined with clear timelines. And we know these systems are also not automated. And then the fees, like we also know, are not static. There are discretionary fees that the civil servants in those offices, right? Just because you want to facilitate the processing of your CFO, give you fees that would basically just add to the cost of getting this stuff. So imagine you as a developer, and then you have this cost, the statutory cost, the arbitrary cost by the facilitators of this CFO, development costs, professional costs, and then also putting in the fact that this thing takes a whole lot of time to secure title. You're basically running at loss. Imagine if you're taking a loan from bank, to embark on development. Now, most equally important is the legal and enforcement framework, and that is very, very important. You see, there must be special land and property tribunals to fast track or basically courts that will basically fast track dispute resolution when it comes to land issues, right? We've seen that prolonged litigations over time is one factor that has encouraged this land grabbing, because if you go to they'll tell you go to court, and then you go to court and you spend 20, 30 years, trying to get judgment, trying to decide who owns this. It basically do not encourage investors to come in and also to put their money. Now, I must say this also, that land grabbing must be criminalized with clear penalties and enforced through a dedicated land protection task force, which we don't have in Rivers State. We don't have. Somebody can just come, take your land, right? And then you see most times that they have state actors that are protecting them, protecting them as against you, that has legitimately, purchased this land. And I think it must be criminalized with clear penalty, not ambiguous, not equivocal. It must be clear that if you do this, if you contest a land that truthfully is not yours, these are the penalty. That's in the short term. And in the medium term, I think attention should also shift to market transparency and standardization of our valuation practices, where valuations are basically we rely mostly on the data from the market, and there is no transparent. In fact, there is no data. Like my friend said, in Rivers State, there is no credible property data. You see, somebody tells you his land is 15 million just because he feels so, right? Not because there are obvious economic factors by demand and supply, or because of utility and all of that shows this land is 15 million. Or, for example, somebody sells the land out of duress, right? And then you refer to that transaction figure, not actually considering the factors that might lead to that particular figure. And also in the medium term, we should really look at market transparency, and then also getting credible data for the transactions in the Port Harcourt. I think I'll stop here. I think I've
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sam. This is for all the panelists, and we have 2 minutes each so that we can round up quickly. I think Mr. Andy is no longer on this call, the data man. But this is for all the panelists, 2 minutes each, please. How do we encourage the decongestion of Port Harcourt City by encouraging rapid development of other satellite towns in the state? And what role should government, the private sector, and local communities play? So I'll start with Architect Bozimo. Please, sir. You have the floor. Just 2 minutes, sir. Thank you.
Well, to decongest, River State has at least a sizable area, not as small as the smallest state in the country, Lagos. It has local governments spread around outside Port Harcourt. The first thing is to connect them. There could be an interesting connection done between Borokiri and maybe Okrika. There could other good road connections between the main Port Harcourt and places like Eche and Co. And then cite significant institutions or government bodies there so that people have cause and room to go there. Also connect them by transit, because there's nothing like putting something somewhere and nobody has either the reason or the means to go there. So it has to be very deliberate with the, urban and town planning. These are elementary in their areas of, practice. I just think there has been so much concentration on Port Harcourt, and that's fine. Port Harcourt is the center of the city, but we have, in fact, coastal areas that could be what you boast about as River State. It should be that when you land in Port Harcourt, if you have not gone to the waterfront, you have not really had the full rivers experience. That could be part of the marketing, part of the tourism, so that you don't feel satisfied just sitting down in Port Harcourt. It's also part of the mentality. Just to round off, the earlier speaker talked about technology. I think technology is key. Now, if an estate agent is listening to this and we're talking about the cutting out of the middleman, it might be a threat. I feel that with technology, you should be able to sit down anywhere, put a particular location in your map and see general ownership. Now, when you pay a fee or when you have the credentials as maybe an estate surveyor and valuer licensed, you can go further. Maybe it's in your dues, you have automatic access. So I, as a casual person, may still need to go to a valuer, but you should be able to see who owns so and so property and then begin to engage in conversations. So technology, I think, is what we need in the next 20, 25 years to make sure that you can sit down in your house in America and find out a piece of land, basic ownership, how much tax is paid on it, etc. That kind of very basic information should be available. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. And the next response is from the Prof. If Prof can give us in 2 minutes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Well, my friend has spoken very clearly, but just to add to that, I would just say that there must be a strong infrastructure plan for those communities, those satellite towns. We can't do without having them. But there is something that happens abroad. Let me take Canada again and America. They have what they call greenfield. Between every city and the next city, there's an agricultural belt where people are meant to produce to feed the city, because without that, the city is poor. So if we have green fields between Port Harcourt and another community, somewhere in Arabia or somewhere far around there, there's a green field, there's a place that is just majoring on agriculture. People are going to be forced to go there and pick, because you cannot take away expansion of cities from commerce. Commerce is the driver. So if people know they will go get something, they will go and get it, but you must prove that there's a transport corridor that is effective. So that's infrastructure. So you create employment. The other thing is that certain projects, functional projects, let's say that we are trying to add up 2 towns to Port Harcourt. What is it that if you go to a hotel, for instance, now, people go to Omoku, even for crime in recent times. Anytime you went to Omoku, you knew you are going to an oil city. I've gone there, I stayed in hotels that was beautiful until crime came. If you remove the crime, you go to Bori, agriculture, go to another area, put something there, and then have very strong transport corridors, not just road. Road is the only means of transport. There are rail lines, there are other kinds of things. And people can get there. And that's one of the failures of Greater Port Harcourt. It is not linked to anywhere. So let's link up the cities, like he said, and then we are good to go. I think that with that, we can definitely decongest Port Harcourt. But more than that, somebody mentioned earlier, is our coastline. There must be an intentional decision, a political will to transform our coastlines, our coastal waterfront. There are over 40 waterfront communities in Port Harcourt. I know them, their sizes, I have done studies on them. We can do something, start from one of them as a case study, as a pilot project, and prove to the people that if you do this, do a simulation like he mentioned earlier, this is what I mentioned right now. If we do this, can people come inside? Can you live in a place like this? We don't like it. And when that is done, the town gets to blow up. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. The next person is Mr. Perri. In 2 minutes, please, sir. Mr. Perri, in 2 minutes.
Okay. Prof, sir, I think my my doctoral research is focusing on how we can upgrade these slums we have, around Port Harcourt to see how we can even transform them into tourist sites. So back to the question, how do we open
what role should the government play?
What role should the government play?
Decongesting Port Harcourt City and encouraging rapid development of other satellite towns.
Absolutely. Open up. See, the Prof and architect Bozimo have basically said it all, right? Open up other local government areas. Open them up. We see what happened in Bori when we had the River State Polytechnic. By that name, River State Polytechnic, we saw how vibrant Bori was. We see what is happening in Bonny. Even when it takes the strongest of will to be able to cross that sea, people go there because of economic activity. I was expecting the immediate past government to have cited the law school at maybe Degema, right, or Abonima or Buguma, right, and then it would make people go into there. And of course, when people move into an environment, there will be economic activities. People would buy, they would need where to stay. There will be services to, there will be people to service those persons that are coming in. It will increase transportation and all of that. Now we have the Trans-Calabari Road. Thankfully, this present administration is opening or is building access to Bakana, to Tombia, where I am from, which is just about 7 minutes on boat and perhaps maybe 15 minutes when this road is completed. I can stay in Tombia, right, and come to Port Harcourt and work. And at the end of the day, I will retire back to Tombia. More so,
thank you.
If these infrastructures are sited, we then also need security. You see what happened in Omok? We had a thriving oil economy, and then insecurity came and killed what is happening in Omok. You don't just site infrastructure and then not secure both the people and the infrastructure. Now, finally, there must be intentionality to protect and preserve government assets. We're seeing what is happening in Chongai. It used to be one of the best locations we go both to sightsee and also generate revenue for the state. Buguma, in fact, there are a whole lot of examples, and I think government should be intentional, like but also as architect Bozimo also said, you can connect Okrika to Burukri. Compensations have already been paid for that project. What will it take to connect Okrika and Burukri? Once you do that, most persons residing in Port Harcourt would rather reside in Okrika, where they have asset, where they have land, right? They would build. It will contribute to the housing stock, right? And more so would decongest, Port Harcourt. We need more cities, and I think it's not rocket science. I just feel the political will is not there, whether out of malice or maybe out of sincere.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. Like we ask for all the people that come on the program, one of the questions we ask is, what is the river state of your dreams? What do you envision for the next for the state over the next 25 years? Prof, this question, everyone will answer, but Prof, this question goes to you. Prof?
I see us praying for a future where government will not be in the center, the seat of government house, but with the people, where who is elected as governor, as deputy governor, as commissioners, will be there to serve the people because they are enlightened and know that they have needs, there are things they must benefit from society. I see a future where awareness will force crime, will force nepotism, and force the political nonsense we are spending out of the way, and then we can begin to reason how to do things rightly. I see that future. I see that future that knowledge will drive because our youths are ready, they are able, those who are willing are there. If you remove this thing, what is happening now is that people are following the system because it pays to do crime now. You must be strong and able to follow a politician. But if they know that it's knowledge that drives it, if a knowledge-driven economy, people will sit up and Rivers will be a better place. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Jesse Braide, please go. You're the next person. Mr. Jesse.
Okay, fine. River State of my dream. Yeah, River State of my dream is I think for now I'll just classify it as a river state that is more ideologically driven rather than divided across tribal lines or party lines, you understand? So I envisage River State to a place where people will come around and discuss ideas like we are doing right now. In fact, I believe that that dream is already coming to pass with this forum, right? So we can set aside the differences that we have. Bad blood. I notice I've been watching the political landscape recently of River State, and it's been really messy, fighting for, many things. And you begin to ask yourself, of all the things that you're fighting for, ideology is not one of them most times. You understand? So I think that, River State can come to a place where we put aside our differences and we address issues like we are doing right now. So yes, I would like us to unite, a River State that unites on issues, unites on ideologies, rather than on tribal lines or political party lines. Yeah.
Thank you very much. A united River State. Let's see how that goes. Architect Bozimo, please, sir, what would you envision for us?
River State has every potential to reclaim its beauty, being the garden city rather than the garbage city. No, Nigeria does not need two Lagoses. In fact, America does not need two New Yorks. Every city there has its own character. Chicago, Atlanta, New York, Los Angeles. Let River State be that place you go to where you are at once able to engage with the oil and gas industry because we are known for that. And I'll talk to you as a man. When I first came to River State, one of the first things I remembered noticing was that on the streets, the ladies all had a smile. It's different from Lagos, where women frown. I'm telling you this. And that made it a very welcoming place. They had a slight smile. They weren't looking hostile. That heart of the average river person should be recaptured and translated into our built environment. Buildings should call you in. You should want to linger. You should want to engage with people on the sidewalk. I'll just put it as the last word. One day, about 3-4 years ago, I was rushing to the airport and my car broke down right underneath the bridge, that bridge, Rumola. And I was late for a flight. There used to be this thug who was there, who had tattoos and everything on his body. As I was desperate, I went straight to him and he organized all the underbridge boys to help me push my car. That is the spirit of the average Rivers person. Kind, compassionate, concerned. Let us integrate that into the physical and built environment of Rivers. And believe me, there will be no better place than Rivers for anybody, both inside Nigeria and outside, to come. It will be a place where you say, if I go to Nigeria and now go to Rivers State, I haven't experienced. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Mr. Perri, you're next. What would you envision in the next 25 years? And in 2 minutes, sir.
Okay, as someone who truly believes in the Nigerian dream, I would want to see a river state where my family, I would also be able to invite my professional colleagues outside the river state to come and enjoy, the beautiful scenes, right? Private highlands, the creeks where we can have good views, somewhere safe where it would not just be described as an oil city only, but would have the feel of the garden city that it used to be, more so a city where, a state where even the poorest are not neglected, and that is where I feel pained every day that the inhabitants of our slums, I can't remember when last, there was any government presence in any of the known slum in River State. I think we should make everybody feel part of the state, where it might not be rapid, but there should be incremental, development, to those regions. Now, let's look now beyond where my passion is. I want to see a state where it is idea driven and not divided on the grounds of partisan affiliation or any other sentiment that will not move the state forward. I want to see river states that is led by individuals with ideas and not because of loyalty to one political godfather and all of that.
Thank you very much.
I want to see a beautiful river state.
Thank you very much, Mr. Perri. Really appreciate this. You spoke about inclusivity and the poor, and I totally agree with you 100%. Because sometime I went to a slum, and when I got into my car for 30 minutes, I had severe stomach ache. I couldn't move. So yes, you're right. They need to include the poor because even in the Bible it says the poor will always be with you. So thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for this insightful. I have my notes, they are really full. I could almost be an agent after this call. So thank you so much. So over to Mr. Ebenezer. Thank you, our panelists. Thank you, Prof, and every other person. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Ann. Really, really great job putting the panel together. I will open up for comments. I know that Mr. Ken Henshaw, who was our expert from last week's conversation on the role of civil society, had a comment in the chat. Sir, would you like to ask or make your comment now, since we still have the panel members before we wrap up?
Thank you so much, Eben. Thank you. My name is Ken Henshaw. So I just want to call attention as we start thinking about our housing and urban development infrastructure. I have just three things that I think that is important for us to capture. And the first has been touched on a little bit. The first is the fact that one of the most active factors inhibiting housing in Rivers State is the attitude of, well, I don't want to use the word communities because they're not communities, they are gangs embedded in communities that make it almost impossible for you to construct. And this has been raised already. At least 2 out of 3, even up to 3 out of 5 people, 3 out of 5 people who purchase land outside the center of Port Harcourt, outside the center, at the periphery, or Magua and all that, right, have active land cases. You just need to go to the police station and find out. So people are careful about purchasing land in Rivers. That's a major problem. And if you eventually manage to beat the problem of owning that title, and then you go to construct, the instant you start digging a foundation, several demands start coming, several demands. Foundation go, development levy, adult levy, women's levy. So no entrepreneur, no business person wants to come into a place and construct and build when there's no clarity about what he will be charged. So that's one thing we need to look at. And there's an example to that, right? In the government of Rotimi Amaechi, we had a policy where matching ground was effectively banned, and Port Harcourt expanded massively within those 8 years where we had a ban on that. Okay, there's a clear causal relationship between the ban on matching ground and the expansion of Port Harcourt. That's the first thing I want to say. The second thing which I want to say is that in thinking about Rivers State
in 2050, it's important that we do not, that we think about the housing issue from the point of view of some kind of political economy. Just to say that there's a way we could approach housing and it reinforces the inequalities that already exist in our society. Central Port Harcourt was built by colonialists who were outrightly promoting inequality. So you have this, old GRA, you have the town, you have the Diob, you have D-line. It was a system, it was a class system created. And I think that Rivers at 50 should deliberately work on policies that push urban renewal, that solves the housing crisis, but does not engender inequality, does not reinforce inequality. That needs to happen. And the final thing, which I think is important for us to integrate into our conversation on housing, is the fact that, and this is something you mentioned, Eben, you mentioned it in the conversation last week. You mentioned the fact that Rivers State is on the frontier of climate change. On the frontier of climate change, you gave the data about how high the sea level will rise in Rivers State. And the floods have been with us since 2012. Every other year we have floods and all that. And I think that in thinking about urban development, thinking about housing, we need to architecturally, begin to design houses that are climate change resilient deliberately. Because in the next couple of years, in 24 years, which is when we get to Rivers at 2050, in 24 years, climate change would have been a major factor with us. And currently, we are not architecturally designing houses that will respond to climate change in the future. And I think that these are three things that we need to take into consideration. Thank you so much to all the panelists for a great discussion.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Ken, and thanks a lot for joining today's session. Really, really wonderful points. A lot of points that were said. I can see Architect Bozimo's hand is up. Sir, do you want to quickly intervene before we wrap up?
Yes, very quickly. If you want to see how people are reacting to land-water relationship, go on Google Earth and check out what they did in Florida. In Florida, every house has a waterfront. They simply look at the fingers of your hand, they evacuate the sand between your fingers, pile it up on your finger, and they put a road in the middle and put houses on the two sides. That way, every house looks as if it's facing the water, and they are raising the land without necessarily trucking in earth from elsewhere. So just check Google Earth, check out what they did. For those are lower lying areas, these are some solutions we can do. Indeed. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. Very, very, very well said. And thanks for these examples. Tonte, you want to jump in? Let's just wrap up the next 2 minutes.
Yeah. Hi, good evening. Thank you for having me. Yeah, so I think I'll start by saying that I think I would call it a privilege of not growing up here in Rivers State. Yes, clearly from my name, I'm actually from Rivers State. But I think for me, it's been a privilege not to have grown up here. And the past few years that I've been in Rivers State, I've been opportunity to observe a couple of things. One of which I realized is critical and fundamental to how things or why things will change is the mindset of people, generally speaking. But that said, I want to actually ask a question, which in part is directed at Prof, if he's still here, and maybe any of the panel members. I think I dropped a point about it in the chat. So the question is, because when the comment about, for example, it was a reference anyway, the law school being cited or situated at places like Buguma or Abunima or any other place, or it could be any other part of Rivers State. So whether anybody says it or not, or it looks like it appears to have been, like I said, a political or maybe personal agenda. So, but in such situations, now, which ordinarily, to some extent, the legislature should be responsible to hold the executive accountable when it comes to these things. Now, but knowing that the legislature is not, they are not experts in that area, who else is to hold the government through the Ministry of Urban Planning or whoever, or which other agency, for example, government, who is responsible to hold them accountable, to call them, quote unquote, to order when they are taking this form of missteps in terms of planning?
That's a really good question, Tonte, and I feel like we touched on this last week as well. We would share the link to the last week's conversation, not to stress our speakers, just to say that it is us, it is the citizens. When the River State House of Assembly fails to do its job, the next point of call, because we're the ones who employ them to become our representatives, the next point of call is us. And I think Ken spoke. I mean, you should listen to the speaks. Ken spoke so well about how we define political will most times as the benevolence of political office holders, but political will is actually, and is given to political office holders by us, because we are the ones who should actually bend and wave political will in the way that we want and in the way that is working best for the people. So in that situation, when the law school was being built, for example, if citizens didn't like it, we could have organized. We should have organized around it. We could have protested at that ground. We could have asked that, we could have asked for a town hall conversation. And that was part of what we discussed last week. How do we ensure that things like town halls are institutionalized? Like, they need to happen. And we need to have this feedback mechanism back and forth. We could have done something. We could have spoken about it, and we could have made sure that it would have changed. So that's just a response. But I see Prof wants to say something. Prof, do you want to chime in just quickly before we...
Yeah, just a short one. I would just say all you're saying is right, but I'm just thinking that, like he said, if you watch our line of discussion, you find out that government, it's not standing in Rivers State, in Nigeria. Okay, so you and I on this platform now, what we are discussing now, those in the ministry don't want to discuss this matter because they don't have any right. There is political network. There are politicians and there are ministry workers. And that is not how governance is done. So what we are doing now is just what we are trying to see how we can run government. And to answer his question, just imagine I'm at the University. We have a campus in Emoha. We have, it was, whether done rightly or wrongly, like Ebi said, they were supposed to provide security. But I can assure you that a few months ago, we closed down the campus. Students were raped on campus. It was closed down. So if you take school of a law school to one other community and there's no synergy between the intent, the purpose, and the sustainability of that thing, it breaks down. That's why what you are doing is important, that we come together. How do we do these things holistically? How do we do this? It's just like what Abi just said. Take the case, if you are going to Salvation Ministries, their headquarters, you see one place, they are always flooded. He just mentioned flooded. I'm very conversant with Orlando. The same thing there. They do what they call artificial lake. At a place there, you have an artificial lake. So not all storm water flow into the river. Within there, do artificial lake, put the sandbanks there, people can go down and recreate. You may not fish there. Erect it, and it takes all the storm water, not foul water anyway, storm water, rainwater. And it stops that water from going to the creek. Because what causes flooding in rivers is when the sea level is rising, rain is falling, water is going there. Then that occlusion, that jam, throws over the bar and comes back to the listing. So we can do that in places. If you go to Florida, I say, if you go to Orlando, you cannot count 100 artificial lakes. They are more than that. That's the design, that's the plan. So when we are ready, we'll sit down. The government that wants to do, we put us together, we sit down and plan. In this neighborhood, we cannot run all the water. How can Port Harcourt not have a canal? Look at Port Harcourt sitting on water. There is no proper canal that you can boat across. You cannot take boat and go anywhere in Port Harcourt. It's very shameful. If you go to Mina, Bamageda did it. Go to Mina, Futo Mina, the old campus. There's a very wide channel there. Very wide channel. That small water flows, and that's in the north. Talk of here. But I've had places where you can leave Borokiri and go to Uniport on water. Waving your hand to your friends as we pass them on the way. But that's absent here. But I think if we come together, these things can be done.
Thank you so much, Prof. Really, really, really well said. Okay, let's take the last comment from Seth Mene. We'll just take a comment for like 2 minutes and then we'll wrap up.
Okay. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity to speak. And thank you, the convener, for always setting up this conversation for us to, discuss the way forward for where River State has to move forward. When it comes to development in River State at large, we have lots of bottleneck. Like for me, I work in the real estate space. encouraged, or let's say I've seen a whole lot of bottleneck situations whereby I have to do a community road, in the community. But that's not my full responsibility to do it. But in terms of what's it called, infrastructural development, I have to take that on my head, and that's extra expensive. So when we talk about housing in real estate, there are a lot of bottleneck that we know that we need to ensure. Now we're talking about moving when we said moving other places to what's it called, the zoning cities. Yes, I think insecurity is also a major issue that we need to solve in River State also, because we can't take our major development to places or to communities where we know that they are not safe. Because we know that if taking these things there, there's a form of safety. Yes, that would be nice. You can't say we want to take the law school to a community and we know fully well that that community is not safe enough for thousands of students to learn without having issues. When we start solving our security, that's insecurity, we also we've solved a lot of issues when it comes to housing. Then the next thing is our transport system, like Prof said. Port Harcourt needs to majorly focus on its transport system, because if I work in places like Omagua from Obirikwe is like a 10 minutes drive. So if I live in Omagua and it takes me 15 minutes to commute from where I live in Omagua or Ishoko down to the Port Harcourt City local government area, 30 minutes, and I'm there. It makes living better for everyone, because we know fully well that the city center is already congested and the city center is very, very expensive. So a good transport system, when we invest in the rail system, in the water system, and making what's it called, sustainable economic buses for people to commute between different towns and different zones, that will also
Yeah.
make the city to live better. So thank you. That's my little bit of contribution.
Very well said. Very well said. Thank you so much, Mene, for that insightful point. Just to say that all of the points that have been said, I know Tonte asked this earlier. We have repertoires on every of the sessions we have. We identified 15 areas when we began the project that River State needs to grow in, and we've handled now close to 10, 11 of these areas. And we continue to have repertoires that gather. So we brought experts from the various sectors, and we're having repertoires gathering all the information. And we're working with these experts so that once we draft these chapters, we send it back to them to ensure that every idea, every solution, is added. And we'll do the same thing as well for this chapter too. A few other sessions that we have coming next week. Fingers crossed. We are almost close to securing 4 local government chairmen to join us for next week's session. Some of them have complained that they cannot use Zoom, so we're trying to find solutions around that, like WhatsApp call and stuff, to ensure that we actually discuss the role of local governments, because a lot of this development is hinged on ensuring that our local governments chairpersons are not lost in the political jamboree. There's so much political jamboree in that local government space. So how do we ensure that this vision for River State goes all the way down to local government areas? We have people who are taking surveys in the various local governments, 23 local government areas, but the chairmen themselves need to be active in this space. So next week, fingers crossed, we'll be able to have them here. We've also had a conversation with Gen Alpha. That's people who are aged between 10 and 16. We also will flip it and have a conversation with the elders. So people who are 60 plus, some elder statesmen, we're trying to gather them together. Hopefully before the end of this month or next month, we'll be having that conversation. A few others are peace and security, transportation, food security, and energy. River State needs to think about its energy source. Abia is already like miles ahead of us now in generating their own power. So we need to be able to figure out how to do that. So we're bringing the experts in that space who are working on off-grid technologies, folks from PHED as well, to be able to discuss how we can solve this. I think what I'm really happy about is that in May we have when we began the project, we started to reach out to various countries, the UAE, Qatar, Singapore, various people who had planned, Rwanda as well, to say like, what did you do and how can we learn? How can we learn from you? We had folks from Singapore. So Dr. Aaron Maniam is the founding head of Singapore's Futures Thinking Center. And I mean, he's followed the project for quite a while. He said he wanted to be sure that we were serious. And so he followed us for 1 year to see that we're actually serious. And he's going to be coming on next month to speak to us about starting from Lee Kuan Yew's vision and how they've been able to build that vision up until this point. He was the founding head of that particular initiative, and it will be great. He's currently a fellow at Oxford University, so it will be great to hear him share some context-specific ideas on how he thinks that he can apply to us in River State. We had initially spoken to folks from Qatar, The Qatar Foundation is like at the heart of Qatar's development. You can find that video on our YouTube where we spoke to like a young leader in that organization, thinking about how Qatar built their development, starting from education. And I think that there are so many lessons that we can gather from that. So just look out for our social media. In me, we'll confirm the dates and we'll be sharing all of that information out there. I'll leave you with this statistic. Singapore's total surface area is 735 kilometers square. River State's total surface area is 11,000 kilometers square. Think about the possibilities. If Singapore was able to build all they've been able to do, the development, the progress they've been able to make over the past 30 years, what is our excuse? I think that's how I'm going to end today's conversation. We have no excuse. River States, the ball is in our court. We have to do the best we can to make our states work. Thanks again for your time, everyone. See you next Saturday once we confirm our local government chairman. Have a great rest of the weekend. Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, Prof.
Thank you, Ben.
Yeah, thanks, everyone. Bye.